It's time to step into the Coming Out Lounge, a cool, safe space to be true to your sexual self. With your host, Rick Clemens. Rick has helped hundreds of people come out of the closet, and now each week he's bringing you cool insights for loving and accepting yourself, boosting your self-confidence, and living a guilt-free, purpose-filled life on the other side of the closet doors. Cuddle up with yourself and get ready for heartwarming coming out stories, ideas for living authentically, and tips for being fully self-expressed. Now here's your host, Coming Out Coach Rick.
Hey, closet busters and closet dwellers. It's time for the Coming Out Lounge. I'm Rick Clemens, the host of the show. Yes, that coming out coach guy that's hopefully helping you, kick out, climb out, crawl out of those closets, whatever you're doing. I want you to come out. And today I want you to be honest. I want you to admit that, well, you know what? Coming out is a really fierce move. Yeah, fierce like in your face fierce, showing what you're going to do to make that move. That's a really fierce, big, bold statement. And it requires that you be a little bit brash and brave. And oftentimes it can feel a little bit like it's a cumbersome task. But I want you to ask this question. What if you could bring your boldest, most fearless self to the coming out journey? In fact, let's ask it a different way. How would it feel to be confident, let your fears go, and become your most fierce self? Yeah, kind of like Beyonce's Sasha Fierce. And you could just be your most fierce self in coming out of the closet. Well, today we've got you covered. In fact, today I'm going to introduce you to a brand new book. It's called Fiercely You, Be Fabulous and Confident by Thinking Like a Drag Queen, by the great author Jackie Huba, and she's going to help us just step up to that plate, become fierce. She's going to help us unleash that inner drag queen that all of us have within us. And today on the Coming Out Lounge, she's going to dish up some of the keys to being fierce and help us truly ignore the criticisms and live life as our most fearless self. Welcome to the Coming Out Lounge podcast, Jackie Huba. Thanks, Jackie, for being here.
Thank you so much, Rick. I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, I'm just excited. And I know you are in the midst of the book launch and all this great stuff that's going on. And first of all, I got to say, I just love the book title, Fiercely You, Be Fabulous and Confident by Thinking Like a Drag Queen. So what were you? Were you like drunk when you decided this is what I'm going to do? I'm going to bring this out? Or where did this beautiful, fabulous title come from?
We really spent a lot of time working on it. And we actually did surveys to early readers. And there's actually a brilliant woman, believe it or not, in Australia who is a kind of a branding guru there. Mm-hmm. She's amazing. And I've connected with her about the book a while ago. I knew she helped authors with titles, and I just shot her something and I said, look, we're struggling with these two titles. The survey results are coming back 50-50. What do you think? She said, oh, throw that out the window. It's Fiercely You. Mm. It just made so much sense to me to think about, the person who's reading it and saying you can be, put it in them. It's like Fiercely You. Yeah. Because I think we just had fierce. And it's like, okay. She's like, no, put it inside themselves. Fiercely You. So I thought it was great.
I think it's great too. And for those of you who are listening going, okay, Rick just made that comment about her being drunk. I already kind of knew a little bit of the backstory on this. And Jackie's got other books that have great titles like Monster Loyalty, How Lady Gaga Turns Followers into Fanatics. I mean, you always seem to just really bring it right home to that, bringing it to them, bringing it to that person. So I'm curious, you obviously had to have something within you that wasn't maybe manifesting as being your own fierce self, or maybe you felt like you were hiding something and this is why you decided to bring this book into being. Tell us a little bit about that.
It's funny because now that I look back, I realize there was always kind of something trapped inside that I just kept quashing down. I worked at IBM for 12 years and you can't really get more conforming than that.
Right.
This was back in the 80s and 90s. And as a woman, it was just very much, really, it was suits and nylons, and it was just rule driven and very male dominated, and just you didn't want to really be yourself. And especially always been kind of a creative person, and that's really not the place for that, honestly, back in those times.
Sure.
And this was, honestly, it was a few years ago. I'd written a couple books on marketing, had gotten out of a long-term relationship and was consulting and keynote speaking. And I think, people who looked at me, maybe they thought I was successful, but I didn't feel that way on the inside. And I just remember thinking, there is more that I can offer the world. There is more of an impact I can make than just helping business people be better at marketing, which is great. And they need that. But it just wasn't fulfilling. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting on the couch one day and I'm just like flipping channels, whatever. And I stumble upon this show called RuPaul's Drag Race.
Right.
And for your listeners who don't know, it's literally a reality television show to crown America's next top drag superstar, hosted by the top drag queen in the world, RuPaul.
And it was it's fascinating that this is like one of those pivotal moments, because this is, so many people ask me, well, when will I know it's the right time to come out? And I always say, there's going to be a divine intervention that happens. You're going to find this thing that it suddenly takes over and you go, this is what I'm meant to be doing. And as you're explaining this, it sounds like this is exactly what happened for you. This thing came to you and you're like, okay, now what am I supposed to go do with this?
Yeah, exactly. Because I thought, I'm not happy with my life. At 47, can I be that confident to just reinvent myself and go do something different? And then when I saw these queens on Drag Race, and they kind of take you behind the scenes, so you can see that these are guys. Mm-hmm. They create these fierce, bold, amazing glamazon personas.
Yep.
And I was like, I want to be that confident. I want to kind of live that boldly in life. I want to have no fear like they do in pursuing this art form that they do. Especially because I think they're impersonating women and they were strong, bold women. I was like, I want to be like these characters that they create. And RuPaul talks about this idea of you were born naked and the rest is drag. What he's saying there is that we all create personas when we go out into the world. Yes. It's not just like what you wear, but it's an actual persona that are part of our personalities. And I just thought, well, what if I could create a drag persona that would allow me to be my most, bold self and super confident. And I love the word, fierce. I just love that word. And not be afraid to do things, not be afraid to reinvent myself or go try new things at such a sort of middle-aged kind of age. That's how it all started. That was my whole fascination with, I have to know more about this drag stuff so I can figure out how it can help me.
I love it. And as you were talking, something that just popped in my head, which usually is what happens when I'm in the middle of these beautiful moments I get to share with people like you, is this drag persona and what we create. I think for many people who are listening to this podcast, Jackie just really framed this nicely, that the person you are now pretending to be, the person who is not the out gay, lesbian, bisexual, transgender person, or even the listeners who aren't LGBTQ, those of you who are hiding your true self, you are in a drag persona that is not serving you. It's not serving you to hide your truest self right now. It's not serving you to be hiding and not being fiercely you and bold and brash and being the person you're meant to be. And Jackie just said a few minutes ago about going out into the world and doing that thing and being who you are. This is some of the underlying messages in this book of just go out there and be fabulous and confident and be that person you've been called to be. So let's kind of roll forward. You have this epiphany watching RuPaul's Drag Race. And did you immediately start writing the book, or did you even know it was going to be a book at that point?
I just became obsessed with it and with drag. And I realized that these drag queens from the show were coming into Austin where I live, as well as San Antonio, which is just an hour away. And I wanted to see them up close. So I started going to every performance I could possibly. I went to every single one. I would do the meet and greets. I would meet them in person. I could see the power and how they owned the stage and how people responded to them. And it was even more exhilarating than what I saw on TV because it was live. And then I went on a drag cruise with 40 drag queens from the show and 2,000 fans of the show.
Wow. That's awesome.
Yeah. And I, because I write books for a living, I just thought, I don't know, my next book has got to be about this transformative power of drag, but I didn't even know exactly the premise. I just knew there was something there that could help people. And I remember people saying, well, if you're going to write about drag, then you really need to do it. And at that time, I didn't even realize that women could do drag, and that is a very valid category of drag. And they call it a bio queen, or I call it just a female drag queen, which is a woman who creates just a more over-the-top female character, but completely different character on stage. And so I was like, dang it, I guess I got to do this. And so I started that whole process of becoming a female drag queen and learning everything you have to know.
So what's been the most interesting thing that you as a female drag queen feel you've had to learn?
Well, I learned everything that they learn for sure. You know, I learned the theatrical makeup and the wig styling and the costuming and the lip sync and all of that. But one of the most important things that you have to learn, and this is maybe one of the keys that we talk about in the book, is the ability to say yes to things that scare the crap out of you. Because as drag queens, I mean, they're always trying different numbers, different costumes, just different themes for what they're doing with their numbers. And they just own it and they attack it. And they've never done it before, maybe, but it doesn't matter. You go out there, you own that performance, and there's maybe no practice. You just go do it. And it might be kind of something different you've never done before. Doesn't matter. You own it. And I kept getting these opportunities to like perform and then do all these things. And I just had to keep saying yes, even though I was scared to death. I'll do it. I'll try it. And it just kept escalating from there. I've learned to get over fear by just saying, well, what would a drag queen do? Yeah. Because I was like, oh, you're becoming a drag queen. If someone offers you an opportunity to perform somewhere, you don't say no. You don't even think about it. You say, what would a drag queen do? She would do it. She would do it. So that's what you're going to do.
That's a really cool phrase to use. I mean, I've had people say, what would Madonna do? Or what would Cher do? Or, what would Beyonce do? I've heard that numerous times. But as you were talking through that, I thought, what a powerful way to start to approach your coming out process. What would a gay man do? Or what would a lesbian do? What would those people do who are already living this life? It's just a powerful way to start to approach. And I use a pretty similar mantra on myself when I get into my funk. Yes. Even the coming out coach gets into his funks, folks. So there we go. When I think about, some of the greatest speakers that I really admire, like a Tony Robbins or a Jack Canfield or, Obama, just people who really know how to master that craft of speaking. I say, okay, what would that person do? Right now in this feared place of, oh my God, what would that person do? And it always lifts me up. And it sounds like that's exactly what it does for you as well, is lifts you into a space of stepping away from your fears and truly going into that place of finding yourself once again, that soul-centered, who you're aligned with, who you're meant to be in the world.
Because, drag queens have a certain personality traits that, that I've learned and then you see in the book that they're just fearless. So I use that. But the thing that was really cool was, I had to develop a drag persona, right? Yep. Like every other drag queen does. So I came up with this idea of Lady Trinity, Lady from Lady Gaga, who, of course, you said my last book. And then I love Trinity from The Matrix because she's just such a badass in the movie. And she kind of holds her own with the guys in the film fighting the machines. And I just love her aesthetic with like the latex and the leather. And it's just very dominatrixy, which is, there's power, in that as well. So Lady Trinity. It was great because I started to own that. And I would, instead of saying, what would a drag queen do? I would say, no, honey, what would Lady Trinity do right now? And so I could make it even more personal to me because she's in there now because I built her and I perform as her and she can do anything and she will do stuff that Jackie would never do. She would wear stuff Jackie would never wear. And I use that persona as a way to, because it's always in there. And that's why when I did my TED Talk, I actually did a TED Talk on this last year. And I talked about these ideas about how we can sort of unleash our inner drag queen. I wanted to show people what Lady Trinity looked like. And I actually performed in drag. I think is maybe the first woman who's ever done drag on a TED stage, which was really
I think you're probably right. But I'm curious. You said you built this persona, which I get. I'm going to challenge you because it's my podcast and I can do that. Don't you think Lady Trinity's always been a part of you? She just got called forth?
Maybe. I think there were elements of me that wanted to come out, but there was no vehicle for them.
Right.
So it's really interesting because I partnered with a friend of mine who I've known for a long time. She's a licensed therapist. And every time I would talk to her about this drag thing, she would always explain to me the psychology behind it. And it was like, Greek to me, but I was learning so much. And so in the book, we actually break down all the psychology behind it. So there's a psychology of like when you create, like we all have personas, we have a persona at work and a persona with our kids and a persona with our friends. This is just another persona. And in this persona, we can put these traits that we don't feel like we normally have and we can put them into them. And it's like almost putting on like a superhero costume. It's like you go outside yourself into a persona that has maybe a lot less fear than you do, who feels more powerful than you do, more confident. And you kind of put that on and all of a sudden, boom. You can do these things. It's called power priming your brain. It's like the psychology behind it. It's when you think about yourself as a powerful figure, it actually changes your behavior and you feel powerful and you can do like more risk-taking behaviors that you may never have done before. And so I love the psychology behind it all.
Oh, absolutely. You know, the reason I bring that forward is I have an inner diva within me, and she just came out when my book got published in February. It's interesting because as I've allowed her to come out, it's begun to influence my speaking. It influences how I show up in the world. It allows me to be free and silly and stupid, but yet very powerful, because she's a very powerful persona. And she is much of what's behind me continuing to do this podcast and to get on stage, because I will turn to her sometimes even in the middle of a podcast and say, so, Lemonade, what would you do? And she would go, honey, this is exactly how we're doing this, because she comes out. That's the Southern Belle in me that shows up, and Lemonade Pop will make an appearance, and then she takes over. And when I do that, even now, I have kind of the goosebumps of she's here, and I feel her really deeply within me. And I know she's always been a part of me, but she is like what you said, there are pieces of me that was looking for the vessel to show up in. Now, I've never done her in drag. I've played a little bit in drag, but I've never done her in drag. And everybody's like, when are you going to do Lemonade Pop and really be her? I'm like, I don't know. I don't think it's time for her to show up yet. But she shows up on stage because when I'm speaking, I'll flip the character and then she's there. And people have said they can even see the body language and everything change when I allow her to just show up, because she's it. She's the voice. So,
I love that. I love that you have a persona. I love that you have a name for this persona. I love that she's got a personality.
Oh.
It's Lemonade Pop. Is that what it's?
Lemonade Pop, honey. Don't you forget. She is big, she's bold, she's brash, and she does not take no for an answer.
She does not play.
She doesn't. Oh, no. Well, she plays, but she only plays when it's pleasurable, sweetheart. Trust me.
It's interesting because I think, and you use her in such a common way that I think a lot of people should, which is, you know, a lot of people in life have to present, whether it's at work or in front of whatever.
Right.
Like when you're a presenter and you have to get up on stage, that's people's worst fears. And I think that's a great, great, great situation where you can pull out personas like this, because you got to put a persona on anyways, because you wouldn't normally talk like that in real life up on that stage. And so to think about like it's Lemonade coming out, not you, all of a sudden, like I'm a different person and I can do things out there that, you know, maybe I'd be scared to if I thought, oh shoot, people are judging Rick versus Lemonade doesn't care what people think.
But don't you think too, by allowing these, you know, you take it to the full extent of actually doing the drag, but what I've found is when I let her show up like I just did, people get drawn in. It's like, wow, this guy is talking about being unique, being yourself, not being afraid to come out of those closets. He just did this in front of, you know, 500, 1,000 people, 100 people, whatever it is. He just flipped that switch and he was okay being who he truly is, but then he can step right back into. And so you see, when you let something come out that's really who you are, it's okay. It's safe. You're going to be just fine. And so it kind of cements the message behind the message, so to speak. And I found that when I discovered just cut loose like this, Rick, because that wasn't really who I was at my core, but it was always when I was in theatrical places, I could do that. But then when I realized it doesn't just have to be theatrical, it can be in my real life. It's freed me. It's completely opened me to go, yeah, let's just have fun and be silly. Because I say, okay, come on, Lemonade, help me be silly right now. Life is kind of in the shits, so let's have some fun. And she steps in, she comes and takes over, and boom, it's done. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm ready to go. And I'm going to be really clear, really transparent here. When I dip down into my own depression, yes, I do suffer from depression, I call her forth like immediately and say, come on, girl, help me get through this. And it is 9 times out of 10, she is the reason that I can step through that more than any medication. So
that's amazing. That's amazing. I love that.
But enough about me. Let's get back to you. So let's talk about Fiercely You. The book came out in August. You're getting ready to embark upon a book tour. Entire content of the book. And I know there's like beautiful keys, 5 steps for really being, you know, fiercely you. What's one of those steps you'd like to share, or maybe a couple of them? I don't want to take away all the thunder of the book, but what's a couple of the really keys to being fierce that you might want to share with the audience?
Yeah. I mean, the most important one we've kind of already talked about, and that's the first one about creating your drag persona. So that's, if you kind of start there, that's probably the most important one. And then one that's, I think kind of, I think listeners might think this is common sense, but there's so much psychology around this. We call it always look sickening in your everyday drag. Mm-hmm. And the idea of it is using what you wear to start dressing for power. And it can change the way you feel. There's some great psychology around this called enclosed cognition. Mm-hmm. And so some people might think dress for success. Yeah, it's similar to that. But what it's saying is if you put something on your body that makes you feel powerful, that will actually change your behavior and you'll become more powerful. So for anyone, it could be anything from, sometimes for women, we put on heels and it changes our posture. It makes us taller. Even just that is power dressing for anyone. It's funny because I've heard of people talking about power panties. They have special underwear where they have a really important meeting and they got to put on the special underwear because the special underwear makes them feel powerful. These are actually psychological principles that totally work. And so dressing for power, because drag queens, a lot of that artifice is what creates the power because in big costumes. And I learned, looking back at my Lady Gaga book, she talked about when she first started out, she was 19 in the record industry and she's 5'1" and is very misogynistic, male dominated industry. And that's when she's put on the persona, Lady Gaga, which I now realize is a drag persona.
Yep.
And she talks about, I felt more confident and powerful by my 7-inch heels, huge wigs, giant shoulder pads, and that persona made me confident. And I didn't realize it when I first read it. And I look back on it, I'm like, oh my God, this is exactly what a drag queen does. And It's something that we can all do too, even though we don't have to, wear a lot of sequins and a giant wig.
Well, I'm guilty as charged on the power panties thing. Another admittance that I don't think I've ever admitted on this podcast, but it's so true. In fact, a good buddy of mine and I often talk about, how do we step into this world as solopreneurs? Because we both work from home, we have our home offices, and, it can become kind of a work of drudgery at times. It's like, okay, well, I just roll out of bed and roll into my office with, which most people go, oh, that would be so cool. Yes, I get to work in my underwear if I want to sometimes, unless I accidentally forget that I'm in my underwear and then I'm on a podcast or something and we're doing the video and it's like, okay, I stand up like, oh crap, I forgot I just have my power underwear on. But, that's okay. But it makes such a difference. In fact, what I do, and this is maybe something those who are listening can really bring into their life because it aligns with what Jackie just was talking about. When you're facing that moment that you're finally going to be truly who you are, you're going to come out of the closet. It could be to that very first person. It could be to that 100th person. Tap into that inner drag queen, that inner diva, that inner power superhero, whatever that is for you, because in that moment, whether it's the posture, it's the pose, it's the way you strut. I know for me, when I come into my office, even when I'm working in shorts and a t-shirt, when I walk through that door, it's like, okay, Lemonade, it's time for us to go to work. I say that every morning. Lemonade, it's time for us to go to work. And again, even as I just said it, I get little goosebumps because I know she's the key member of my team. And that helps me when I'm on the phone to get podcast guests or to get a speaking gig or whatever it is. And the same thing applies to those of you who are struggling with the thoughts of, oh my gosh, when I come out, this is going to be hard. Yeah, it's going to probably be a challenge, but find that inner drag queen, that inner drag king, that superhero, and tap into that. I think that's just a beautiful principle. So we've talked about a couple of those key principles, Jackie. I really appreciate you sharing those. Is there any other little secret that's kind of hiding in the book that you'd like to give the listeners before we kind of wrap things up? And again, I don't want to give away the book because I want everybody to go out, buy the book. The book's going to be right here on the show page. You can see it there. Click on the cover of the book and you'll be taken off to Amazon to go buy a copy of Jackie's book. But is there something else you'd love to share with the listeners before we wrap it up for today?
Yeah, really quickly. And I don't mind sharing keys because there's so much to them. But one of the most important ones that I struggle with, and I think a lot of people struggle in, especially in the situations that your listeners are in, is this idea of your critics. And key 4, we call it tell your critics to sashay away. Mm-hmm. And if I've learned anything from doing drag and from interviewing these top drag queens, it's, they learn how to shake off that criticism. And there's 2 places it's coming from. One is it from other people, but really, really sadly, it comes from inside ourselves. And what I've learned is that often that inner critic is that voice is way more devastating sometimes than what we hear from other people. And in the book, we actually have these great exercises for people to do to learn how to deal with these things. And we have this really fun, it's kind of fun, but it's serious at the same time. This voice that's telling you that maybe you can't come out or you can't veil who you really are. We say that's not your voice. That's someone else's voice. She's outside of you, and her name is Felicia. You say to her, bye, Felicia. So when you hear this voice that's telling you to be afraid and to not do whatever, or that you're, whatever it is, you look too fat in that thing, whatever it could be, that voice is not you. That's coming from someplace else. My co-author would tell you that's a voice that maybe is from someone else in your past that you sort of internalize. It's called internalization, and it becomes your own. But we say take it back out, but assign it to this foul person called Felicia. Say bye, Felicia, and don't listen to that. I mean, that will help you get through the things you need to do. You don't need to hear that.
That's awesome. So we got time. So do you want to finish sharing the other keys, or you want to leave the mystery to the listeners to find them on their own?
Oh, no, there's one more I can share. And this is, again, I think I alluded to it earlier, but the last one's called You Better Work. Mm-hmm. And the idea of that is being able to take risks and get outside your comfort zone. And there's this great, I talked about power priming earlier, is if you can take even one small risk outside your comfort zone, like if you're trying to come out or if you're trying to do whatever, is there one small thing you could do that scares you? And if you get past that, you channel that the next risk you have. You can say, if I did that, I can do this. And then you do that. And then you say, oh my gosh, if I did those two things, I could do this. And that's called power priming, where you think, hey, I was powerful then, I can be powerful again. One of the things I had to do in learning drag, because I don't have a theatrical background, I decided to take a burlesque class because I thought if I could do burlesque, that I could do drag. It's going to take your clothes off. And that, like, what's harder than that when you're a middle-aged person like me, a woman, And so it was super hard. I wanted to quit the class, but I kept thinking, what would a drag queen do? She would not quit this damn class.
Exactly.
But the fact that I got through that, it propelled me forward to think, if I did that, I could do anything. And I think that's one of the things I've learned from drag queens and drag queen culture is that, like, this ability to take risks and this ability to keep working through those things is super important in so many things we do in life.
I'm sure you may have come across this, but I'm going to share something with the audience because some of them may not be familiar with the drag queen culture and how they really truly fit in the LGBTQ community. They do fall under the umbrella of trans, so to speak, even though they may not have had any transitions done, they do fall under that umbrella. But what also happens, and this has come up on a couple of podcasts with a couple of the drag queens I've had on, that oftentimes they're not warmly embraced within the LGBTQ community. I mean, within the LGBTQ community, because they're campy. They're just fun. And it has kind of that same effect of not being accepted for who you are as a lesbian, gay, bisexual person. And the reason I bring this up is you may find yourself at some point in time, any of you listeners, that as you step into the LGBTQ community, you may come across a drag persona and suddenly you may not know what to do with it. Or you may come across the leather community, or you may come across, somebody in the fetish communities, and you may go, I just can't understand or accept them. And I just want to tell you, it's not up to you to completely understand. It is up to you to embrace that we've all got differences and we all come from very diverse places in who we are. And just remember that somebody out there isn't accepting you either. And the more you accept people for who they are and as they are in our own community, it's going to open doorways for you to be so much more loving and caring towards yourself and others as you step into the life that you're destined to live.
Yeah, that's very interesting too about your comment about that drag queens are often misunderstood, because I think there's so many types of drag queens. Like
yes.
I think people get confused with trans and drag queens,
absolutely.
Like the bigger culture, right?
Yes,
like they
the bigger culture. Yep.
And so I've had to explain, and I try to explain in the book to people that, a lot of drag queens are just gay men who are they're acting and putting on a persona, and that's all it is. Yep. If you're trans, that means and in drag, you do not take identity seriously. You mock identity, yes. Right? Yep. And as a trans person, you take identity very, very personally because it's who you are, not what you do.
Yes.
And then the confusion is trans drag queens. So my drag mother is a transgender woman who also does drag. And that just then completely confuses people. But anyone can do drag. It doesn't have to be just a gay man or a woman like me. It could be a trans person. The challenge for folks today, especially in the broader culture, is trying to understand all of that. But I've learned so much about the trans community because my drag mother is trans. But it can be confusing. And I hope that people, as you said, will kind of seek to understand as people are trying to seek to understand who they are in the same exact way.
I'm glad you just said what you did, Jackie, because that's the thing. When we stay curious and we seek to understand, then we get to understand ourselves and we get to understand others much, much better. When we turn off the curiosity, that's when we always get in trouble.
Yeah, because we start to judge and we put labels on people that we don't really, it's because we don't know and we don't ask questions. So we'll label them and we'll put these stereotypes on people that are things that we've heard in the culture. Yeah. And it's just, I hope that people will, like you said, stay open and stay curious and learn about maybe parts of the culture or people that they don't know. We're just in a world where I think we need a lot more love and understanding, especially in the LGBT community. And I consider myself part of that, even though I'm a straight ally, cisgender woman. I am a huge ally to all, and hopefully I'm helping to educate, even if I can a little bit. That's why in the book we have a drag primer, because I want people to understand, you know, where drag queens came from, how do they fit in LGBT culture, what transgender is. They need to know all this if they don't.
That's awesome. So one of the questions I always ask at the very end is if you could leave a piece of advice for anyone who's listening, whether they're LGBTQ, hiding in the closet, somebody who's struggling with being confident in who they are, somebody who's hiding their uniqueness in the world. What would be a piece of advice you'd love to leave the listeners with as we wrap up today?
Oh my goodness. I feel like I've just been espousing advice all hour.
You have. Mm-hmm.
I just, you know.
Okay, so let me ask you this. Yeah. What would Lady Trinity say to that question?
She would say, honey, you know what? Time is short. And it took her a long time to come out. And I kind of wish that I had explored this as Jackie a lot earlier, so that who knows what I could have done. And I don't regret, but I just think start now. Don't say, I'll do it later. I'll put this off. I don't have the power now. I mean, you know, do what you need to do at your own pace, but don't put it off and wait. The things that you want to do in life, go after it.
And with that sounds like a really great place to wrap it up. Jackie, thank you so much. But before we go, what do you got coming up in the next few weeks? I know you've got some stuff going on with the tour, and I think you said you're going to be in Salt Lake City area somewhere on tour.
I've got all kinds of events. I've got some corporate events. I've got some private events, but I do have a public book signing and talk in Salt Lake City, October 4th.
Awesome.
And it's sponsored by the great folks at Soul Salt, which is a coaching firm. So if people will just go to my Facebook page, you can go to Jackie Huba Author on Facebook. You'll see all of the events where I'll be, and maybe I'll be in your town.
Sounds great. And we will have all those links to everything that Jackie's doing up on the show page. And once again, Jackie, I just want to say thank you so much for being fiercely you and showing up here on the Coming Out Lounge today.
Thank you so much for having me, Rick. I really appreciate it.
Hey, Closet Dwellers and Coming Out Lounge listeners. I wanted to ask you a question. If you could take stress out of your journey, be more content in who you are, and find ways to do some of the most difficult things that you need to do as you come through the closet doors, would you do it? I bet the answer is yes. Why do I know this? Because I have been getting requests from listeners and clients or prospective clients about finding ways to just address certain things in their coming out journey. Some people don't want to work for a long time, and I totally get that. And that's why I've designed some brand new coming out coaching one-on-one sessions. These are very focused, topic-specific sessions. For example, maybe you're looking at coming out midlife and how do you do it? Could be that you're already out, but you're not completely out and you want to talk about how do I do this and come out at work. Could be that you're having trouble even accepting yourself as a gay person. And might there be a possibility that you're really struggling with your sexuality and your religion? Depending on what you're looking for, I've designed 9 powerful, highly focused one-on-one laser coaching sessions that you can choose from. Each session goes for 90 minutes. We stay specifically focused on the topic at hand. And each of these sessions also includes a copy of my book, Frankly, My Dear, I'm Gay. So now that you've heard about this, how would you like to go check them out? Well, here's how you do this. go to thecomingoutcoach.com. On that page, you can scroll down. You'll see stuff for the book and for some other offerings, but then you'll see one-on-one coaching sessions. Click on that button, and it will take you to a page that describes each of the 9 offerings that I have. If you happen to be listening to the podcast right now, just look over to the right-hand side of the show page, and you'll see one-on-one coaching sessions right there. Again, just click on that button and go check out these new offerings. So, what do you think? Isn't it about time that you stepped out, you stepped up, and you stepped into resolving whatever the biggest issue is in your coming out journey? I'm Rick Clemens, the Coming Out Coach, and I can't wait to work with you one-on-one.
You've just experienced the Coming Out Lounge. Go online to www.comingoutlounge.com to learn more, and tune in again next week for more stories and tips for being true to yourself.